And I'm in Tyler Fornes, but Fred, I have a really big question for you. How do you feel about our show streaming exclusively to Honor Club starting in January of 2023?
Well, I really value our partnership with Warner Media, and I appreciate all they've done for the good, the bad, and the Hungee. And so I just want to respect them and not go against them with another media company. I'll take all
Yeah,
questions about what it feels like for someone to win a championship belt now.
let's start by talking about this because we have a lot of news to get to, and then we are, as we talked about, going to break down ROH's final battle, and we'll do some quick thoughts on Dynamite and Rampage as well, because there weren't a ton of talking points, but the big ones from those shows really tie into the news portion of the show, which is going to take up a lot of our time. Tony Khan is unable to secure a TV deal for Ring of Honor, but unfortunately, due to the lack of professionalism in the scrum afterwards, we don't know why. We don't know who he negotiated with. We don't know what kind of offers there were, if there were any, if he's even able to negotiate outside of Warner Brothers Discovery, because there's a chance that within the contract, there lies specific language that forbids him to have a competitor with another broadcasting partner. Fred, I just want to give our friends at the flagship their Patreon. They did a live instant reaction, and Joe Lanz absolutely buried the living hell out of the wrestling media for not asking any questions, even ones that Tony Khan blatantly set up because he knew that questions were coming. Like, we know it's bad. We know that the media just absolutely blew this, and most of the people in that room don't have any kind of professional journalism experience, so obviously they're not going to answer those questions. Whether they should be credentialed is a whole different topic, but they were, and that is that. My question for you, Fred, isn't about necessarily the scrum or the missing pieces of information that we have regarding it going to Honor Club instead of getting a television deal of any form or even going to YouTube. My question for you is, how does this impact Ring of Honor in a positive or negative light? And is there a path to getting on TV?
I mean, there's always a path, I suppose. The question is, are they going to get enough money to make it worth their while? Frankly, I'm not very optimistic about their, ability to get paid. Especially just what they're doing right now. Because the Honor Club is just $10 a month for the weekly TV, and then you don't even get the pay-per-views until 90 days later. So it's actually a worse deal than the old Honor Club under the previous ownership. But I think that it's a bad sign. It's definitely not a good sign that they are just putting this on Honor Club without even trying to, or without any sign of it going quickly to a TV station of some sort. What I would assume they would try to do is a package deal with the AEW properties when their TV deals are up. Is that at the end of 2023? I'm trying to recall right now. I'm not sure.
So their initial deal was October of 2019 for 3 years, and then about 6 months later, actually just after the pandemic started, they got an extension.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was, I don't know how long the extension was for. I think it was only for that 6 months where they basically rewrote the TV deal.
Yeah.
So I believe we're talking March or April of 2023 as the end.
Okay. Let's see. There's a just rapid Google has it's a May 2021 article from Wrestling Inc. that says, citing Meltzer, that the deal still expires in 2023. I don't know offhand if we have more pressing information or more up-to-date information, but that seems to be pretty consistent. So assuming it is the end of 2023, that's not too terribly long with regards to, how long they have just going on our club if they're able to then get another deal. But this is very much a future play. In general, the Ring of Honor deal is like the purchase of Ring of Honor, to be clear, in terms of what the deal is that I'm speaking of there. But no, this isn't good news. It's not like a disaster, but they're probably going to lose some money on Ring of Honor for a while. because it's a crowded marketplace right now for your just streaming dollars in general, but specifically wrestling dollars. With, I mean, just think of all the services that are out there: Impact Plus, of course, Peacock with the network on it now, New Japan World, Stardom, all the companies that are online now, because that's such a commonplace thing now. And to ask people to spend that $10 a month and then also pay 30 or 40 bucks a month, for pay-per-views, for Ring of Honor, and then on top of that, all the AEW stuff. I mean, I feel like that's a big ask in the modern marketplace.
I think here's how I would approach it. If I'm going to put it on Honor Club, I think what I would do is I would load up the first TV taping, put a really good product out, have people go to Honor Club to watch it, but have the first 4 episodes be not paywalled, be unlocked, let everybody view it. So then you at least are going to say, hey, I understand Honor Club is X, Y, and Z. It may not be the most appetizing, considering what we're asking. We're asking you to pay for weekly television along with a back catalog, and not everybody's going to want the back catalog, because a lot of people coming into ROH, you have people like us who have nostalgia for the product. You also have a lot of people who are AEW fans who just want to see more AEW wrestlers in it, as an appendix or an attachment to what AEW is. Like, this is essentially an AEW offshoot at this point that Tony Khan is trying to revitalize into hopefully rebuilding the great image that Ring of Honor once had. Well, those fans aren't going to care about the back catalog except, oh, I love Samoa Joe. Here's a cool Samoa Joe match from 2005. Like that you might be able to get some draw with the back catalog, but outside of people like us, the back catalog's not going to have a ton of value. So then essentially you're asking them to pay $10 a month for weekly television. We know how that worked with AEW. We just saw how it worked in a lesser dollar amount for the NWA. It is not going well for them either. So I guess if you want them to just go to Honor Club and you offer for free and hopes to entice them to attach on, I can see that potentially being a strategy, but feels like you should just put these on YouTube, grow an audience, cultivate it, and then try to score a TV deal. But just straight Honor Club, it feels like it feels like a miss, not because they didn't land a TV deal, because this is how they resolved not landing a TV deal.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many things to consider here, because putting it on Honor Club is the choice of money over exposure, and there's always the argument that exposure would lead to more money down the road. And if they are really going to do a hard divide between the AEW and Ring of Honor rosters, there's a lot of people on the Ring of Honor roster that would really benefit from exposure. Just to point to one, Willow Nightingale. I think the last thing you want to do right now is to sequester her off from the world for a whole year, if not longer. And that can very much be a detriment to her career and to Ring of Honor as well. Because I do think she could be a draw for him. That's how high I am on her, just in terms of her charisma. I think that probably the reason they aren't putting it on YouTube is because YouTube does not make them that much money, I would have to think. If it was up to me, I probably would have replaced AEW Dark Elevation with the Ring of Honor TV show. But if you're really going to push the Honor Club thing, you're just going to be drawing 100% off of the weekly TV. Okay, not 100%, but the vast, every time there's been a report on what is the most watched thing on the WWE network or anything else, it's always the recent stuff. The going back to the old stuff is not a major moving point for viewership. Now you can, like you said with the Samoa Joe example, you could definitely try to make that meaningful. Hey, you came here to watch Claudio win a TV match, click here to watch 5 very good Claudio matches from back in the day, that kind of stuff. But no one's really hit upon the formula on which to make that work. Now, I will say WWE in general, I don't think has really pushed it hard when they have their network. And I think that other streaming services don't push it that hard. So, okay, if you want to come up with like if you could try, there's no guarantee it'll work, but you could try and just push it real hard, like have Ian Riccaboni in a studio for an hour or two a week, just hosting a live episode or a live go through the archives and feature maybe one event or focus on 3 or 4 matches of one guy. And you could try doing that. But again, while I think I would enjoy that, I don't think that it would draw in too many people as a breaking point of should I pay money for this service.
And I think one thing, like you kind of mentioned, hey, you can do this, you can do that, like the match gimmick. I know on the Voice of Wrestling Patreon, at $1, $5, and $10 tiers, by the way, they have the match of the week. And the match of the week is always makes sense in the concept of wrestling. There's always something going on, and that's what Joe draws from when he ends up picking the match. And I think stuff like that are going to be a great way to retain people with Honor Club. But I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a draw for people to want to join Honor Club.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. And I think to me, that's the biggest issue. And there was talk in our office Slack about this, and I'm trying to remember the exact point about it, what they were saying. I don't remember. If I remember, I'll bring it up. But it just feels like a really big disappointment that it's just a straight Honor Club move. But one thing that I found interesting is the pay-per-views are going to be changing for Honor Club subscribers. You're not going to be, because I believe the deal was if you were an Honor Club subscriber, you got a 50% off discount for the pay-per-views.
I think they were actually included for free if you're a subscriber, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but it was one of the other.
At one point, they were 50% off. I remember that being a thing.
Yeah. I think towards the end, it was you get the pay-per-views for free, and also you get a percentage discount on our merchandise shop. Now, granted, most Ring of Honor merchandise look like crap, and I never bought any, but I didn't say that out loud. Yeah, so like I don't know. It feels like a worse deal, which is not great. But the number of people that probably are aware of it being worse is relatively low, so I don't think they're really doing any damage. But it's not good.
Yeah, it's definitely not good, and it's honestly a really disappointing blow for Ring of Honor. And I remember the take. I had it, and I also saw it in the office Slack, so I'm going to take partial credit for it because I know I'm not the only one, and there are a lot of smart people in there that have the same take. I hypothesized when that if Ring of Honor doesn't get a television deal, it's not going to be based on quality. It's going to be based on the fact that Ring of Honor literally announced that they were going on a hiatus and essentially going out of business just about a year ago. And why would a television company see that, hey, you went bankrupt, so I think we can make a lot of money? Like, just that general construct, I think, is one of the reasons why. And we don't know because nobody asked the damn question. But yeah. I think it's why this product, like if Tony Khan decided to name it something completely different, if he wasn't a nostalgic wrestling nerd who believes in restoring wrestling history and treasuring it and honoring it, and I know that's kind of punny, but it's not meant to be, then I think Ring of Honor probably would have had a better chance to get a television deal, because the name Ring of Honor, outside of the 3 shows that Tony Khan has done, is most notable in the media landscape for failure rather than being any form of success. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think, I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on it because on the one hand, I don't know how much value the Ring of Honor name does present to the modern market. Now, you can argue that there's been a year of really great pay-per-views. I think every Ring of Honor pay-per-view has been very entertaining, and that the buy rates have been solid on them. I think we're still waiting on some kind of numbers from Final Battle, so we'll see on that one. But I think they've all been pretty respectable, considering that it's Ring of Honor branded and all this stuff. But at the same time, like, I know Dave Meltzer always expresses shock that he's using the Ring of Honor name rather than the AEW name, because the AEW name will, provide more buys. But I think that what that kind of misses is that these shows are not Ring of Honor shows. They're kind of like AEW's NXT. Is about the closest comparison I can make. It's something of a developmental territory with a couple of decent level stars on top. And I think that if you were to present like Final Battle as a AEW pay-per-view, but then like most of the top AEW stars aren't on it, I think that would upset the audience that buy it. So I think it's kind of somewhere in the middle. Should Ring of Honor just be renamed to insert generic created name from TEW here, United States Championship Wrestling or something? I guess you could make that argument. I don't think it really makes much of a difference either way, because even if you do associate the name Ring of Honor with the failures under Sinclair, what doesn't change is that I think that no matter what name you put on it, these Briscoes FTR matches will draw. And I think they have, and I think they will to some extent, at least on Final Battle. I think there was kind of a unfortunate situation with being on at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon. I think that'll hurt buys a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I found it interesting that the best shows that Ring of Honor did as far as drawing power only reached about 20% of, like, I think what the baseline for AEW pay-per-views is as far as buy rate, because you're talking about 150,000 viewers, buyers. That's about the median at this point for an AEW show. That's kind of like that threshold at this point. Like the first one's got about 100,000. I think their worst was 90, and their best was obviously All Out 2021, which was an all-time show. Yeah. And that did, I think, about 210, and it was just absurdly high because of a variety of factors. One of them being CM Punk's first match in damn near a decade. Like,
closer, yeah. 8 years, I think.
And the rest of the show was loaded. You had the match of the year with the Young Bucks and Lucha Brothers in the cage. There were extenuating circumstances to that, but 150,000, that's your baseline. Ring of Honor is doing 30,000 as essentially an offshoot of AEW without those top stars. Now, Chris Jericho obviously headlined this show, but he was never a ROH like long time competitor. It's like, it feels like somebody coming into WWE at the Royal Rumble and then wrestling for a couple months, doing WrestleMania, and then leaving. That's kind of how I felt this Chris Jericho run was, except I actually think he tried to build the prestige of Ring of Honor by holding the title, because Chris Jericho means something in professional wrestling. He means something with television and ratings. He just does. So that whole arc makes sense. But outside of that, you're building around the Briscoes, Dalton Castle and the boys. Now it feels like Top Flight is going to be a huge act in Ring of Honor, which I think is a tremendous idea. You have Athena, who's now holding your women's title. Samoa Joe, your legacy mainstay, who still delivers on the mic and in the ring. You're building around outside of AEW talent. And because you're building around that outside talent, like it's really, you can't consider it a true like AEW branded program. And I think you kind of alluded to that. It's its own entity, and it's going to be really fascinating to see how this ends up working out, because Tony Khan's booking is objectively very, very good. But at the same time, it's how is it going to work when Tony Khan does not have his top stars? Because we know how Rampage has been. Rampage, as we talked about last week, is booked horribly, and it feels like there might have been a corner turned with the Moxley Takeshita match, which I saw some people throwing 5 stars at. Do not blame them. But we're gonna need more data before we give them any kind of credit outside of just shoehorning in a match because you needed to pop a rating. I want to see that they're taking care of it, and I worry that because Tony Khan does not have the kind of star power that he has with AEW, that you're going to see the same thing happen with Ring of Honor and it's going to be something that we're going to monitor very closely.
Yeah, and one thing I think that definitely, um, is to watch with the Rampage space is that I think he's done this before. This exact, we'll put all hands on deck for Rampage. It's going to really matter now, and then like 3 weeks later, it's back to Rampage. We'll see if that happens again. I'm hopeful that he'll be very mindful of that going forward, but. And I don't even know what the expectations are for Ring of Honor to be considered a success by Tony Khan right now, because is it a matter of, like, are they hoping to just break even for this year, which could be difficult alone, let alone make a profit? Are they just hoping to get some footage together so that they can sell it to somebody with as or not as part of AEW's video library? I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's an interesting situation. And I guess we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see what happens with it. He did tease, or outright say, really, no teasing, that New Japan would be part of Ring of Honor moving forward as the Hungee cat makes a run in. So we'll see what that means. And if it's like, we're going to be sitting over Naito every once in a while or something, or if it instead means, hey, we're sitting over Danny Limelight, or whatever young boy is on excursion right now, because I think one would make a difference and one would not.
No, I agree completely, and I'm very intrigued to see, especially with the U.S. presence of New Japan Strong, how there ends up being some sort of symbiotic relationship between the two. Do they have conversations about potentially merging the two programs? I think that is a long way away. But I think the idea of at least having a home base for Ring of Honor, and albeit it's across the country from where Tony Khan is usually located down in Jacksonville, Florida, I think it could be a really interesting move. You would obviously be building up the future for both New Japan and AEW with the kind of talent that you're going to be utilizing. You mentioned the likes of Danny Limelight. You have Fred Rosser, who's been doing a tremendous job as the strong openweight champion. You have all their young boys. You have the young talent that Tony Khan has that he's going to prioritize on Ring of Honor. I think that partnership is going to be very key, because at one point, the Ring of Honor and New Japan partnership was all but dead. And the dynamics is going to be really, really interesting, because Tony Khan has the high ground with AEW, but you could also argue he has the low ground with Ring of Honor. So how they interact, the politics with everything, and how everything's going to tie in together, Fred, I think is going to be the most fascinating thing to keep an eye on for wrestling in 2023.